All right, y'all. Do you want to talk about books with me and also reading slumps? Ooh-wee. So, like I have mentioned, if you have not yet been here for a Books with Bella stream, thanks. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. This is a stream I do once a month, every month. I try to do it at the very beginning of the month, but I pushed this one back because of my reading slump, which we'll talk more about. But I take you through all of the books that I read the month before, all of the books that I'm hoping to read this month, and then we just chat all things books. So we're still gonna do that, but I want to caveat today with I am officially in a reading slump. This hasn't happened since I started the Books with Bella stream series, so rip. It has impacted my ability to read and enjoy books and focus on books, but also it has impacted my ability to talk about books. I find that I was sort of, sometimes before these streams, I like to kind of practice and be like, oh, what did I think about this book again? And I was looking through the books that I read and I was like, I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. So there might be a little bit of I enjoyed this book, but I don't remember why. That happens today when I talk about the books that I read last month, and we're gonna roll with it. I put this stream off an extra week. I was originally planning to do it last week, but we're doing it today instead, and that was largely because of this I don't know how to talk about books right now, but that's okay. I think I'm allowing this to be a week of a low and slow fire. So I love books. I'm not gonna stop loving books. I love reading, but this week I need to let my passion be a little gentler, a little less intense. So bear with me. If you have questions about any of the books that I read, please let me know. But I think I'm just gonna be saying less than I usually do. And it is what it is. That's how it is. So our plan for today, talk about the books I read last month, talk about the books I might read this month, and then maybe together we can come up with some ideas for getting out of a reading slump. I want to sort of preface that with, I'm not in a rush. If I don't read a single book this month, that's okay. That's all right. But I also I get a lot of enjoyment from reading, so I do want to be able to at some point come back to reading. So we'll sort of talk about that together as well. But yeah, Ren's a baby in the corner. Do you see him right there? Hi, bud. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you. He looked up at me like, hello, me? You called? He loves napping there. That's his cardboard cat scratcher. I can't imagine it's the most comfortable thing ever, but whatever. Yeah, we're on simmer. We're on simmer for now with reading. I picked 8 books to read this month. I have made it 10% into exactly one. I'm right there with you. Yeah. I have a book that I was supposed to read for November book club that I still haven't finished, which also book club, we should have a chat. I'm so sorry. I've been uncommunicative. It's true. And I'm enjoying the book. And I read a certain amount of it in November, and I've read a little, I tried to read more, and I'm stuck. I'm just stuck. Huh? What's the deal? So we'll chat about book club. I'm close to DNFing the book I'm reading right now. And maybe that's what it is, right? Maybe we need to DNF some books, clear out some space for new stuff. Or also sometimes I really struggle with putting down a book that I'm enjoying, but I just can't read right now. Cause I don't want to consider it a DNF because I want to come back to this later. But sometimes I need the reminder that you don't have to read a book right now. You can like a book and it still might just not be the right time to read it. Right, Ren? He's back. He said you talked about me and I knew it. I heard. Anyways. All right, I'm going to tell you all about the books that I read in November. Excuse me. Sorry if you heard that tiniest little babyest burp. I can't explain myself. I have the hardest time DNFing books in general. I'm pro DNF, right? Like my thoughts on also, if you're not sure what I mean, DNF means did not finish. Like, so it's usually like if you're a person that like sort of tracks your books, usually you'll like mark a book as read when you finish it. So there's like this concept of marking a book as DNF, did not finish. And I feel like generally it means like I stopped reading this book intentionally. I'm not coming back to it. I will not finish it. Like I think a DNF also is like a and won't. Didn't and won't finish. But I'm totally pro DNFing books because I feel like I just don't like wasting my time on something that's like not working for me. And like I really don't like, I view marking a book as DNF as like, this didn't work for me, but it might for you. I feel like I have, especially around here, I talk a lot about how my opinions on a book shouldn't or don't need to impact your opinions on a book. Like, I'm happy to recommend a book, and if I really enjoy a book, hopefully you will too, because that's like a really special thing to share. But our own specific experiences, preferences, whatever, whatnot, they impact the way that we enjoy or do not enjoy books. And so naturally, we will not all like all of the same books. Anyways, I think because I have really gotten that down of like my preferences aren't universal, I don't mind DNFing. But sometimes I struggle with like, if I'm reading a book and I like, even if I don't like it, sometimes I just really need to know how it ends, which is really tough. And also I could just like read someone's like spoilers synopsis. I don't know. That's my only hesitation with DNFs. But also, if I'm in a reading slump, sometimes I feel like my like negative view of reading in general might be impacting the way I feel about a book. And then I don't want to mark it as DNF because maybe it isn't that I don't like the book. Maybe it's that I just don't, it's just a bad time. I don't know. I kind of feel a reading slump too. Can't tell if it's because of the book I'm reading or not. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Is it that the book that I'm reading doesn't work for me? Is it that I don't feel like reading right now? Is it that this is a good book but a bad time? Like, there's so many things, and it's hard to move past that, like, understanding what the problem is. I think I need to be better at setting that boundary for me. I try so hard to power through, but like, at what cost? Yeah, and I think a thing that I think about a lot is like, okay, I almost said, who cares? And that's not what I mean. What I mean is like, who is impacted if you don't finish the book? Like, that's a thing that I think about pretty often is like, is there a negative consequence for me not finishing this book? Will it impact the author? No. Will it impact my friends? If it's a book that I'm reading that I picked up for me to read by myself? No. Like, there are times where I've definitely powered through books because a friend asked me to read it, or it was like a book for a book club that I was in. And then there's like, that's a different judgment to make. But if I have picked up a book for me to read, just for me, there's no negative impact if I don't read it. Yeah, I don't know. It's never that simple. And I feel like it's like, one, sometimes I really need to figure out how it ends. And two, sometimes I feel like if I've said I want to read it, then I should just read it. Or like if I've purchased the book, I should read it. But I don't know. I like to think of my time as valuable, and I want to spend it doing the things that I want to do. Anyways, DNF your books. I won't tell. I know that in my heart, I just need to be better at putting that narrative in my head so it cements itself. Yes, I feel that a lot. Ugh. My sniffles are out. All right, speaking of books. The books that I read in November. Okay, first up. Okay, so first of all, before I even show any books, I read six books in November, which I think is kind of on the lower side for me. I don't know exactly how much. I don't have the numbers in front of me, even though I do track the numbers. I think I've been reading more than that lately, but 6 is still a super reasonable number. But like, I read 3 of these the first half of the month. And then like the other 2, the other 3... No, I read 3 of them I just finished in the first half of the month. two of them were audiobooks, and so I just sort of like slogged through them while I was probably sort of entering a reading slump. And one of them was a book of poetry, and it was very short, and I read it on the November, like the holiday weekend in November. Okay, anyways, 6 books. First up, Under the Whispering Door. This was our book club pick for October. So I feel like the thing here is that I have my reading slump probably started at the end of October, and I just didn't fully address it until now. I think I spent all of November like in a reading slump without just fully admitting to myself that that's what was happening. Because this one, it was our book club pick for October. I started it towards the end of October, and I could not finish it in October. So I finished it in November, at the very beginning of November, and then we had our book club discussion. I liked this, but I didn't like it as much as I wanted to like it, if that makes sense. We had like a really interesting book club discussion about this, and it was some people really loved it and some people were sort of meh about it, and I feel like I was closer to the meh area. And I think what it was is that I had an idea of what this book would be based on the synopsis. So I had an idea in my head going into it, and it just sort of wasn't that. And I also felt like a big issue that I had with this book was that I couldn't, the book tried to balance like serious plot, serious conversation with like silliness, and I found that for me it did not strike that balance, and so it was really hard for me to like stay engaged because I kept being like, oh wait, okay, we're being silly again, and then like, oh, we're being serious again, like, and it didn't, I think it like took me out of the story a lot to have to try to like understand that balance. But like another person in book club loved this book, and it totally resonated with them, and it like really, really was emotional and like a very good experience for them. So I think that this is one of those books where like my preferences impacted the way that I did or didn't enjoy this book, as they always do. And like I think if I had let go of my expectations sooner when reading it, I could have enjoyed it more than I did, if that makes sense. I read House in the Cerulean Sea about a month or two ago and was head over heels in love. See, I think that's the other thing, is that I heard such incredible things about this author. So like I said, this is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, and I heard really, really incredible, great things about his other book, House in the Cerulean Sea. And so I think I feel like my expectations got in the way of my enjoyment of this book. I loved the beginning of this one, lost interest in the middle, still not sure how I feel about the ending. Yeah, I feel, okay, yeah, like so also, good like mention, we do not do spoilers during these streams, just in case anyone hasn't read these books and wants to read them. So I like to be, like exactly how Sage did, I like to be vague. We'll sort of talk about our feelings about certain parts of the book, but no worries, no spoilers around here. I felt the same way. Like, I felt so conflicted about the ending. I don't know. And there was like, the beginning started out so strong for me. I was instantly hooked at the beginning. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, what? And then it went on, and I felt like I lost the characters. I really lost, I felt like I started the book at the beginning with a strong sense of the characters, and then I lost my sense of the characters throughout the middle, and then the ending I felt was so it felt so disconnected with how I had envisioned the characters in my mind that I was like, what? I don't know. It lost me. It lost me. I got eaten alive on Bookstuff for not liking Cerulean Sea. See, this is why, like, we talk about this every month, and I will talk about this forever. It's so important that we talk about books with the knowledge that, like, we do not all have the same taste. Our taste in books is informed by our just random personal preferences, our previous experience, our identities. Like, there are so many things that go into our taste in books that even some of the books that are, you know, regarded as like the best books ever written, not everyone will like, because they just don't, it's not possible to meet every single person's preferences. So I really love that. I think we work to create a space here where we can, like, I can say I didn't like a book and you can say you loved a book, and that's okay. And I really like an interesting thing. Anyways, that's an issue that I sometimes have with like Instagram book spaces and like book talk, that it seems like there has to be like one opinion, and that is a little bit frustrating for me. Anyways, what was so interesting about the book club discussion for this book is that a friend, like I said, a friend in book club had an incredible experience reading this book, and getting to hear about their experience of this book actually made me enjoy the book more, because I was able to sort of see it through their eyes, which was really special. And I really enjoyed that. So if I dislike a book, I actually love hearing about folks who enjoyed the book, because I can gain some enjoyment through their enjoyment. But yeah, the reality is we just won't all have the same opinions. I think it's the writer's voice that resonated with me, not so much the plot. See, interesting. I found the plot resonated with me, and I couldn't get a good sense of the writer's voice. Like, I felt like the writer's voice, and maybe it was a problem of like, I wasn't letting the writer's voice just exist as it was, and I kept trying to like think of it in my own terms. Like, I think my thought process and voice is different from the writer's voice, which duh, of course. And I kept trying to like understand and like box in the writer's voice, which almost ruined the book for me, which was really interesting, because if I had just like, I think if I had just let myself enjoy this in a different way, maybe it would have worked for me. I don't know. Reading books is such a personal experience. I'm surrounded by people who mainly read smut, and I would never touch that, but that doesn't make their taste in books wrong. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Like, our tastes in anything, but including in books, are so personal and different based on so many different variables. Like, it's different for everyone. I find myself appreciating things that I typically don't resonate with when I hear people who love it talk about it. Yes, huge same. Huge same. Anyways, I think this was like, it approached a miss to me, but there was a lot about it that I really, really enjoyed. This one had a lot of side characters that I really, really loved. I think the voice, I just couldn't get a good grasp on, which did impact my enjoyment of it. But the plot was really interesting. I would still recommend it. Okay, the next one that I read, this was an ARC. This was an advanced copy book that I got access to through NetGalley. Thanks, NetGalley. Appreciate ya. Where am I? This is Something About Her by Clementine Taylor, and it was published on November 7th. So this book is out if you're interested. I read this book towards the beginning of the month because I wanted to finish it before it was published, and I think I finished it the week that it was published. And it was very interesting and this is one that I feel like I have been having a hard time, like I wrote a review for it and it was such a brief review. I just really struggled to put my words on paper about like how I felt about this book, which again should have been a sign to me that I was entering a reading slump. But anyways, this was, let me see what I can tell you about this book. Queer. It was sort of like it was sort of like a queer coming of age kind of story. And I really, really enjoyed it. I found it very emotional and interesting. And I was very I don't know why I really have been struggling to explain my thoughts on this book. I really, really, really enjoyed it. Kitty, don't scratch my screen, please. Could you not? Can we be a good kitten today? I was planning on starting this one after my current read. I really, really, really liked it. It was very it was one of those books where, how do I explain? Like, a lot happens, but also, it was very relatable. It was very centered in real life. There were definitely, this is one where I would just check the content warnings if there are things that you find triggering. But I think it was a really special read as a queer person, and I would totally recommend it. Let me see if I can find more about it so that I can just give you more information. because I feel like I'm like the tags on like in so I use Storygraph for stuff about books, and it has the like LGBTQIA plus tag on Storygraph, but it's like, how do I explain it? It's queer, it's coming of age, it's like about like in the like synopsis it talks about like, it says, is a story about the fragility and transformative power of first love, which I think is very fair. It's emotional and raw and relatable and queer, and it's very like, I feel like this book captures some of the like really big parts of growing up as a queer person, and some of the really big difficult struggles that some people encounter, and not just queer, but like kind of experiencing first love and like growing up and experiencing love, you know. It captures some of the like really big tough moments of that, but also some of the small moments as well, which I found to be really special. I feel like this book like allows the characters to just sort of like exist as they are, which seems like it should be a really straightforward, simple thing, but sometimes I find in queer literature the characters just have to be like bigger than just an everyday person. And I don't know how to explain this other than I felt like I got to see the characters struggle with like, I won't cry. I got to see the characters struggle with some like really big, really tough stuff, some like really big, tough, young person queer stuff. But I also got to see them just like be people growing up and learning, and I really appreciated that, you know? Anyways, would recommend. Like I said, I got this one for free through NetGalley, but it is out now. I really liked it. I'm honestly like, I find I almost always enjoy books that are like coming of age queer, just because they often really resonate to me in like some ways. I don't know, I really liked it. Well-rounded, not just a trope. Exactly. Yeah, and I find I've been reading a lot more like queer literature, and I find that I think that's the norm for the books that I'm reading now. Like, I think I've gotten pretty solidly good at like not just reading like queer people as tropes, but it still makes me happy, you know what I mean? Anyways, I liked that one a lot. So I don't have more like, I think this is the point where you can really tell that my reading slump has like entered. So the next couple of books are going to be the same kind of deal where I just like, I don't know how to talk about them, but I still enjoyed them. So anyways, do you see the kitten ear? Hey buddy, what's up? I love reading about queer characters just existing. I love some more of your recs for queer lit. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I have a good amount. I've been like, so like I mentioned, I use NetGalley to get ARC books, which I think stands for like advanced reader copy or advanced review copy. But basically it is a book that you can get access to before it is published. And like the way that it works on NetGalley is that you get free ebooks before they're published, with the like in exchange for leaving an honest review. So it's like a really helpful way for authors and publishers to get folks to read their books and like get reviews out on or before the date that the book is published. And it's really great for readers and reviewers because I'm able to get access to free books and I have to review them. So it's like a good exchange. Yeah, sorry you saw a little kitty butt. He just has to check to make sure he didn't miss any treats in there. You know. But so on NetGalley, I have a couple of like tags of books that I specifically follow, and one of them is anything in the like LGBTQ sort of category of NetGalley, which has been great because I'm reading more and more like modern queer lit, which is really, I really enjoy it. Okay, anyways, back to November books. The next book that I read in November was The Happy Couple by Nisha, I think, Dolan. I have learned and then promptly forgotten how to pronounce this name. I'm so sorry. I think it's Nisha Dolan. Anyways, The Happy Couple by Nisha Dolan. This is Nisha's second novel, I believe. The first one was Exciting Times, which I borrowed Exciting Times from a friend, and I still owe 3 books back to my friend that I've had for like almost a year. I'm so sorry. I promise I'll return them. Anyways, I borrowed Exciting Times, and I weirdly, I haven't finished it. It is a book that I have picked up and put down several times, not because I don't like it, but because I like it so much, which is very rare. I like it so much that I'm afraid of the ending. So weirdly, I never finished Exciting Times, but I loved the writing style so much. It's very much like it follows like someone's life in a sort of mundane way, but also like big stuff is happening. I loved that book so much. I'm terrified to find out the ending. Anyways, so when I also got this one as an ARC. When I saw that this author had another book coming out, I was so jazzed. So I requested the book on NetGalley and I was denied. I didn't get the like ebook of this book and I was so bummed. But then a few days later, I saw that there was an audiobook on NetGalley and I thought to myself, they wouldn't say no to me twice. Anyways, so I got the audiobook. Thank you, NetGalley. So this one was an audiobook. I read the audiobook arc of this book. So I got access to it before the book was published, but I got access to the audiobook, not the physical book. This was published on November 7th. So if you are interested in reading it, it's out now. Highly recommend. I really liked the audiobook. It had two narrators, and I liked them both a lot. I loved their accents. Really satisfying to listen to. And I loved this book. Ooh, I loved this book. It was so good. It was like good in a kind of way where a lot of times I talk about this often. Usually when I'm listening to audiobooks, I'm like listening to an audiobook while also going on a walk, washing the dishes, doing laundry, whatever. And it was so good that I had several moments of like listening to the audiobook while like, this is me scrubbing dishes, okay? And I'm like listening, and I was just like, I would stop what I was doing. And I also, at least at one point, let me see if I can find it in my journal. I like wrote down a random quote from this book because I was like, hello. The quote was, a character described himself as a major league doubt benefactor. And it took my brain a minute to catch up. But like the character was talking about how she always gives everyone the benefit of the doubt. So like giving someone the benefit of the doubt. And the character was like, I'm a major league doubt benefactor or something like that. And I, for some reason, it stuck in my brain. It was like so clever to me. Anyways, I like wrote it down just in the margin of my like journal because I was like, I cannot forget this. And there was another spot in the audiobook that I don't know where I took a note of it. So I'll have to see if I can like go back and find where I made a note. But there were just like a couple of lines in this book that were so clever. I think a thing that I really love about this author is that even when talking about like sort of mundane moments, like the author is just so sharp. Like I love Nisha. Let me just confirm how to pronounce it. I have to watch an ad before I can listen to this video of how to pronounce this name. Irish name pronunciation. Nisha. I'm so good. I got it. Okay. Thank you, Sage. I thought that I had learned it. But then I second guessed myself. Who's surprised? Anyways, Nisha Dolan, just truly an incredible voice as an author, like so like clever and sharp and like, oh, anyways, really, really good. This book follows a happy couple, maybe, and you get both perspectives, and it is so, I don't want to say more because I don't want to spoiler it, but like, it's just so interesting. I loved the story. I loved the characters. I loved the plot. Like, everything was so just, life is so just tough. Just life is tough. It's not like I loved the ending. It's so good. I cannot recommend this book enough. I feel like I don't have a lot more to say other than like, Nisha Dolan, I think, might be like the smartest, wittiest person to exist. And I loved her characters, and they're this like perfect combination of flawed, but not in big ways, just in really human ways. Like, okay, that's another thing to say. Do you know how sometimes you'll read a book and like a major part of the book is that the characters are flawed, right? And I find so often in books with flawed characters, they make massive mistakes and they do really big bad things that you have to sort of be like, ooh, wow, that's our flawed character. That's tough. And there were characters who made, sort of big mistakes in this book, but there were also characters who just made a series of like small mistakes, and there was so much about this book that was like very relatable and also not in some ways. And also there's also queer vibes in this book, just worth noting. And it was like heartbreaking in some ways, but also just very like, yeah. And I can't recommend it enough. I loved this book. I also really loved Exciting Times, which again, I still haven't finished because I love it. When you love something so much, you can't finish it. Anyways, I think at this point I would read anything written by Nisha Dolan. So 10 out of 10, highly recommend. And again, the audiobook, really, really, really good. Really, really special. So, okay. Those were the only 2 arcs that I read last month. The next book that I also, typically when I do these, I do them in order of like when I finished the book. So those were the 3 that I finished towards the beginning of the month. And then for the next, like from like the middle of the month on, I read there were 2 books that I took a super long time to finish. So before I finished either of those, I started and finished this book, which is a book of poetry that I read over there's a holiday in the United States that I do not celebrate because it's just rooted in like a really violent and horrible history. So instead, every year around the time of Thanksgiving, I like to read at least one story. Kitten? I like to read at least one story that centers the Indigenous American experience or voice, or not always Indigenous American, but just like Indigenous stories. So this is a book of poetry that I found. I was really struggling at this point in the month, I was really struggling to read full-length books. Like, I was just struggling with my attention, and so I looked up basically like poetry to read. Sorry if you can hear the background noise. My cats have found one of their favorite toys, which is a paper bag, and their favorite thing to do is just run into it. And they just run back and forth and run into it, which is great. It makes for a great sound. Okay, anyways. Okay. I looked up a list of like poetry to read that is like poetry by Indigenous authors, and I found this on the list, very like highly regarded. So the book is called Post-Colonial Love Poem by Natalie Diaz. It's a series of poems, and it was really good. I feel like I have never read a poetry book and disliked it. It's really good. There were a couple of poems, I can't remember if I wrote any down, but there were a couple of poems that like really, 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 in fact, I think I took a picture, hang on. There were a couple of poems that stuck with me really, really significantly. Yes, okay, there was a poem in this book called "The First Water is the Body," and it talked a lot about water, like our connectedness to land through water being in our body, water being like the thing that gives our bodies life and also the thing that sort of like gives the earth life. It really got me. Like it really, really, really got me. It was really powerful. I feel like this is another example of I like really have been struggling to capture my words and thoughts. But this one was really beautiful. It like, I think, yeah, it was really beautiful. I highly recommend this book. Yeah. I feel like I also really struggle to talk about poetry because when I read poetry, it's so often a very like emotional experience. Like this isn't a book where there was a plot that I followed and I learned, we learned that like we follow characters on an experience and then something happens at the end, right? Like this is a series of poems where every single one made me feel something and something different. But anyways, regardless, really, really enjoyed this one. It was really, really beautiful. A lot of the poetry was very tough, but also very like, I don't know, it just really got me. 10 out of 10, really liked. The next book that I finished in November, sorry, one of my cats went into my closet and it's the time of day where the sun is coming through there. So there's just this like stripe of sunlight coming in. Okay, anyways. The next book that I finished last month, which this is The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. So I feel like this book got a bunch of attention when it was published, rightfully so. It was like Britney Spears, I think it was basically her first time sort of talking, like really in depth talking about her experience since her conservatorship was ended. And I started reading this actually with some friends and fellow streamers just recently started a podcast, which is live streamed on Twitch and then also shared to YouTube, called Are We Okay? And it's like a book club podcast. So they read a book and then talk about, like, they'll read a couple of chapters at a time and then talk about the book on stream. So if you're interested, you should find the Are We Okay Pod Twitter. It's Are We Okay Pod on Twitter. Find them on Twitter to keep an eye out for when streams happen and whatnot. But it's also really cool. They have a Discord server for the sort of like book club side of things, and it's been really cool to get to chat about books with them. But I started reading this book with them for book club, and we were reading a couple of chapters per week. So we like read a handful of chapters. They discuss on, or like we all sort of participate, but we discuss on stream next week, etc. But I got to a certain point where I was reading in like with them, like in like keeping pace with the podcast. And then there was a certain day, and I listened to this one on audiobook. I really, really liked the audiobook. There's a like foreword or like intro by Britney Spears in the audiobook, and then the rest of it is read by someone else. I forgot what name, but the person who reads it does a really incredible job of like capturing Britney and capturing sort of like her energy and her emotion and her voice, which is really, really special. I really tend to I often enjoy memoirs read by the author or read by someone who can like very convincingly capture the author's sort of voice. And this was definitely that category. Anyways, I got to a certain point where I was keeping pace with the podcast, and then there was one day where I was listening and I could not stop. Like, I could not stop listening to this book. I couldn't put it down. And I finished it. So I finished it ahead of time. So if you are interested in reading this book and chatting about it with friends, if you pick it up now, you can still catch up and enjoy it with the Are We Okay podcast. So yeah, and the two folks hosting that podcast are Dom and Eva. So they're great. They're both really great. Anyways, so like I said, if you're interested in reading this with friends, you've got an opportunity to. But yeah, I really liked this one. Definitely check out the content warnings before giving this a read. It's really honest, and like Brittany sort of takes us through her life and her experience of fame, starting from when she's a young child to where she is now. And there's, I think, as a lot of us know, if we've, seen information about Brittany on the news, there's a lot of really tough stuff that happens in that time frame. But it's also just a very interesting, I think, like, the interesting thing about Britney Spears is that I think so much of what we know about her has been told by everyone except for her. We've heard things about her from her family who might not always be giving us accurate, or like aren't necessarily speaking like Britney's true experience, or speaking to Britney's true experience. And also, like, I remember being younger and constantly hearing about Britney Spears on the news. And I think it's really, really special to get to see someone tell their own story. And it makes me think a lot about how much information we learn about celebrities is like where it's actually coming from. Anyways, I really liked this one. It's really beautiful because it's really incredible to get to see someone tell their own story. But it's also very difficult just because there are difficult things that happen. So that one. And then the final one that I read of November, and this is one I started this in the beginning of November. Like, literally, I think I started this like one of the first few days of November, and I didn't finish it until the very end of November. Like, the truly maybe the last or second to last day of November was when I finished this book. This is called Seasons of Love by Helena Greer, and I probably would not have picked this up on my own, but lately I've been really enjoying like, what am I trying to say? I've been enjoying more romantic books, which since the beginning of me talking about my reading preferences, I have always said, first I used to say that I didn't like romantic books. Then I said I was very picky about romantic books. Now, I don't know. I'm still sort of picky, but I'm liking more and more romantic books. This was like a holiday romance book. So it takes place around like Christmas, sort of. It's really, really cute. I listened to the audiobook I think I started reading. Oh, anyways, the reason that I picked this one I didn't have an arc for, but it's because this is book number 1, and there's a second book in this series that was just published on November 28th. So I got the arc for the second book, and I was hoping to read the first book and then read the second book. So sorry, microphone. But it took me forever to read the first book, not because I didn't like it, just because I'm a mess right now with reading. Anyways, this one was really, really, really cute, really sweet. The two main characters are queer. I love a queer romance, and it's very just like feel good, sweet holiday. I will say, I feel like it went on longer than it needed to, but I think like it did this thing which I sometimes see happen with like romance books, where it was like very lighthearted and sweet and feel good, and romance was happening, but there's also like, I think that it's hard. I think so often in books, it's not just a like, here's one character and here's another character and now they're in love, yay. There's like some other difficult thing happening that's driving the plot. And I think sometimes we almost spent like too much time on like other stuff. I don't know, like I almost felt like the author could have just dedicated more time to the romance and like let the rest of the plot just sort of like be what it was, if that makes sense. Anyways, I think it was a little bit longer than I would have preferred, but I really liked the story. It was really, really sweet, and I liked the main characters, and it did have enemies to lovers vibes, which is one of my favorite tropes. So, and they're gay. Enemies to lovers but queer. Okay, you have my attention. Anyways, I really liked this one. I'm hoping to read the second one that was just published, but yeah, it just took me forever to get through for some reason. Anyways, those are my 6 books that I read in November. I think you can tell, like, it was interesting sort of forcing myself to talk about them, because the more that I talked about some of these books, the more I was able to like parse my own feelings about them, which is cool. But I think you can probably tell that I just have had a really hard time explaining my feelings about books lately. And I think previously, or like typically, I'm able to read a book and then like describe my feelings, talk about it, tell you who I recommend it for, all that kind of stuff, which really helps because I write a lot of reviews. But lately, like, I've been really struggling to write reviews, really struggling to parse my own feelings, and I think you can kind of tell. So sorry that I wasn't able to give you as much information as I normally do, but hopefully some of these seemed interesting to you still. So if you've read any of the books that I read last month, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you are hoping to read any of these, I would love to hear about it. But yeah, 6 books in total. I also don't own physical copies of any of these books. So some of them I rented from the library. Some of them I rented ebooks or audiobooks. And some of them I had like digital ARC copies. So like Whispering Door, I borrowed a physical copy from my library. Thank you, library. I love you. Something About Her was a digital ARC. Happy Couple was an ARC, but it was an audiobook. Post-Colonial Love Poem, I borrowed the ebook from my local library. The Woman in Me, I bought the audiobook from Libro FM. Love you, Libro FM. And then Seasons of Love, I borrowed the ebook. So I usually what I do is like come up with a little stack of my books that I've read to like show y'all on stream. And I looked through these twice and I was like, why don't I have any of these? So somehow I just like didn't read any physical books last month, except for the library. But yeah, that's how it is sometimes. Out of all the books you talked about, I love to check out Something About Her. I really liked that one. I think that my queer friends would really identify with it. Yeah, I like that one a lot. Cool. All right, so those were my November books. Next up, I want to tell y'all about what I have planned for December, and I also want to talk about like where these plans are coming from and if I need to adjust things, because so typically what I do every month is I come up with a plan of books that I want to read, just because I find that a little bit easier than like going to my bookshelf, seeing like 100 books and being like, what do I want to read? I don't know. So it's a little bit easier if I do a little bit of planning. However, and also beyond that, sometimes I have like ARC books that I need to read a certain month so that I can finish reading them before they're published or before I lose access, things like that. So some of my plan is because I really need to read these books for a certain time. And some of it is just because, anyways, the reality is I think I might need to adjust my schedule in order to come out of a reading slump. So a lot of my plan for books to read in December are books that I had already planned to read in December. But I think I might need to really think about this and see what I can wait until a later month, see what needs to be adjusted, and all that stuff. So this is a very tentative December TBR is what I'm trying to say. I don't know why, but I kind of felt like I wouldn't end up liking Something About Her, but you talking about it made me really excited about picking it up. It's very, when I feel like I liked it the whole time through, but I felt like I liked it for a bunch of different reasons at different points in the book. And it's a very like, in some ways it was very slow because so much of the action is sort of like very gentle action. I'm really curious to hear what other people thought about it, because I think also like part of why it really resonated with me is because I find like the stories of queer people finding their first love or coming out or growing up to be very compelling and relatable. Anyways, I'm curious. I'm excited and curious to hear what other people think as well. Oh my goodness. I have a sniffle. Okay, so December books. So several of these also are like books that I already started and need to finish, but I like couldn't finish them in November, but really should. So the first up is Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. This was our November book club pick, and I still haven't finished it. I'm so sorry. So typically we have like a book club. We pick a book for book club once a month, and we have a discussion towards the end of the month. So I think what I need to do, and I've been putting off because I'm ashamed, I need to message book club and see if we can basically push our December book back and our January book back and have this discussion happen midway through this month, because I'm behind. But this was our November pick, Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. I have already started reading it. I'm like a good chunk of the way through, and I just like I got to a certain point where every time I tried to pick it up, I was doing that thing. Do you know the thing where like you read a page and you go to switch to the next page and you're like, oh my God, I didn't actually read any of the words on this page. I was just like pretend reading. I've been doing that with this, and I'm so frustrated because the main character is so cool. Like I have enjoyed the book, and I'm just stuck. I'm just stuck for no good reason, which is a huge bummer. This was rough to get through. I ended up listening to the audiobook at 2.5 speed to get it done. It's also like, it's not a small book, which I think is part of it for me is that it's like very daunting because it's large-ish. I have this one from the library, and it's not like horrendously large, but it just feels large to me. Maybe if I borrow the audiobook as well, that would sort of help me get back into it. Anyways, this is a reminder. Friends, don't let me forget to message book club later today. And book club, I'm so sorry I have let you down. It's my reading slump. But like, I'm just frustrated with myself that my reading slump is happening when I have books in the process that I want to be reading, and I just can't for no good reason. You have not let us down. Thank you, Sage. I appreciate you. I appreciate you tons. But I'm hoping that, so I think I've been reading I have the physical copy, and then I also ended up borrowing the ebook. So I have it on my Kindle as well. So I don't remember how far I am because I was last reading it on my Kindle. So I don't have my bookmark in the physical book. Anyways, I think I'm like a little over halfway done. So I think that I can probably finish it in the next week or so if I am able to sort of like focus on it again, which we'll see. So I'm thinking that maybe we could do our book club discussion just like towards the end of December for this one, and push back our December book 1 month. Which I imagine, I don't think folks, it seems like a lot of us are in a reading slump, so maybe folks will be in agreement on this plan. But yeah, I don't know why I've like really struggled to stick with this one. Like when I first picked it up, I read the first like 4 maybe chapters like so quickly. I was like instantly sucked in, and then my reading slump came for me. I haven't started the December read yet. Okay, perfect. See, we'll just push it all back a month and it'll be fine. No one has to know. It's a busy time of year. So that one, okay, that's my plan, which actually then changes my TBR because my next book on my December TBR is our December book club pick, which is Siren Queen by Nevo. I have the physical. I literally bought this. I've read another book by Nevo and I loved it. And then I saw the cover for this and I was like, sign me up. It looks so beautiful. So now, originally I was planning to read this in December for book club, but now I'm hoping we can do this one in January and then have our January book in February. Boom, easy. But yeah, I don't know very much about this other than I think it has like old Hollywood vibes. And I read another, like a very, I guess like a short story, a novella maybe by Nevo that was so incredible. I loved her writing style. So I'm excited to try like an actual novel. But this will just get shifted to January. So surprise. I really want to read Siren Queen. I'm really excited about it. How do you choose books for book club? So book club, we have a book club that we run through the Discord. So I talk about it whenever we talk about books here, but it's all in Discord. And the way that it works right now, exactly like Sage said, we suggest things to one another and then vote for 3 months in advance, just so that we have a little bit of time to like read a little bit ahead of time if we need to, get the book if we'd like to. So no pressure, but if anyone is listening and would like to join our book club, you are totally welcome to. You just have to join the Discord and give yourself the book club role. We're open to reading really anything. We kind of take any suggestions and we just end up sort of picking the ones that folks are most interested in. I think a lot of the books that we've read have been queer. We tend to find a lot of queer books, a lot of fantasy books. It's been like a lot of queer and fantasy. And I think, yeah, mostly that, right? I think the first ever book that we read for book club, which was Legends and Lattes, which I think set such a good tone. Like that was I loved that book. But yeah, we've read, I should like get a list. Oh, I have a list of all the books that we've picked. Oh my gosh, I'm so silly. I was like, I should have a list of all of our books. It's right here. We've read Legends and Lattes, Gideon the Ninth, which was also queer, but like it was funny to go from Legends and Lattes, which felt like such a quick read, to Gideon, which was not a quick read. Mooncakes, which was a graphic novel. Sourdough, Genderqueer, another graphic novel. A Psalm for the Wild Built, so good. The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, so good. Arrival Most Vile, so good. Under the Whispering Door, Juniper and Thorn, and then our next up are Siren Queen and The Memory Police. We've had so many great picks. Gideon was amazing. Gideon was so good. I have the second Gideon book on, like I own it, and I've just been like waiting for the right time to read it, and I'm so nervous because I know it's gonna be good, but the book 1 cliffhanger was intimidating. Queer and fantasy is where a majority of folks' interests intersect. Totally agree, yeah. But like not everything has been queer and fantasy. We definitely branch out, but it's almost like we definitely that's where we gravitate towards. Awesome, Dem. Welcome in. Me or Ahmad will be able to add you the like access role. I usually don't check until after stream just so that I don't get distracted, but we'll let you in when we get a chance. Thanks for joining. I'm so looking forward to Memory Police. Me too. I'm really excited for that one. I went to a book signing for Bookshops and Bone Dust. It was glorious. I haven't picked that book up yet, but I know that I want to, and I'm really excited to read it. The first book was so good. And I feel like that opened up a whole, like, that idea of, like, fantasy. But I think, how was the Legends and Lattes, I feel like, was described as, like in the very beginning, like before the actual book, it said like high fantasy, low stakes or something like that. And I loved that concept so much. And we recently read another book called Arrival Most Vile, which I still think about that book. It was so phenomenal. And it also had that vibe of like high fantasy, low stakes. And I just love that, like, I don't know, I love that zone. All your book club picks are ones I'm interested in? Okay, incredible. He said this is to books what Legends and Lattes was to coffee. It's like a love letter to being a reader. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for that. Okay, I have to get it. I love that. But yeah, the book club, it's open to anyone. You just have to be in Discord because that's where we organize. But I find it's been like a really fun way to, like, a thing that I really enjoy about participating in a book club is that sometimes there are books that I don't know about or maybe like wouldn't pick for myself, but someone suggests them and they're some of the best books that I've ever read. And so there are a handful of books that we have read for book club that are books that I would like, that I didn't suggest, that I might not have picked up, that have been some of my favorites of all time. And so it's really fun to experience reading that way, you know? Anyways. So again, Juniper and Thorn will finish this month. I think I can do it. Siren Queen getting pushed to January. That's going to help me feel less stressed for sure. The next book on my to read for December is Clementine, book 1 by Tilly Walden. So I'm actually already like about halfway through this. My bookmark's kind of in there, but I'm about halfway through this. It's a graphic novel, as you can see. And it is it like exists in the world of The Walking Dead, which like I'm actually not a huge Walking Dead fan. I think I watched most of season 1, but that's it. So I really don't know. I think this character might exist. I think the main character might exist in Walking Dead, but like I don't know. I'm not a Walking Dead person, but I just like the concept of zombies in general, and I would really and truly read anything from Tilly Walden. Literally anything. Tilly Walden is an all-time favorite author of mine. I have all of their books. I think I have almost all of their books as well. Tilly Walden is one of my absolute favorites. So Tilly Walden is like a comic and graphic novel artist / writer. Also, we have sometimes these show up on stream, but not always. I have Tilly Walden's tarot deck, the Cosmic Slumber tarot deck, and it's phenomenal. I'm a real big Tilly Walden fan. Anyways, I really like this. So far. I'm about halfway done, and I just like I've just struggled. See, this is how I know I'm in a really, really, truly a reading slump, because I've struggled to even finish this. I've been having to read like literally one chapter at a time, because I just can't focus on it for a super long time. I don't know what that's about. But this is really sweet. It's about like a group of young people existing in the Walking Dead world, so zombies, and helping each other out, and it's just really interesting. Also, I feel like now is a really good time to read this, because at least at the part where I'm in, they are living somewhere very snowy, which feels like just right for this time of year. But I love it. It's really beautiful. It's really good, and I just haven't finished it yet. I love Tilly Walden. Someone I was talking with, so one of my friends, like ages ago, probably like 2 years ago at this point, recommended that I read On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden, which I think it's down. I have some of my graphic novels I have here, and then I think I have all my Tilly Walden ones on a shelf downstairs. But I think that was my first ever Tilly Walden book, On a Sunbeam. So good. 10 out of 10. Truly incredible. So good. Like slightly life-changing for me. But a friend of mine recommended it to me. I think like 2 years ago. And they were also talking about potentially doing a reread recently. And I'm thinking maybe a reread of On a Sunbeam would help me sort of get back out of my reading slump. So I feel like if I can finish this one, maybe, or even if I can't, maybe I'll pick up On a Sunbeam again and like see if that helps with my reading slump, maybe. But I also, part of it is like, I don't want to read a book that I love while I'm in a reading slump and then like not enjoy it and then be like bummed, you know? But I don't know if that's how it works. Rereading something you know you love is a great way to get out of a slump. That's what I'm hoping for. Maybe I just need to reread. Maybe that's what I need to do. So the other books, so those are my first 3 that I wanted to talk about for December. Again, we turned 3 into actually 2, so that's helpful. And those 2 I have already made progress on, so that's good. Then I have 3 ARC books that I'm hoping to read this month. Some of them are more time sensitive than others. So 2 of them I really should finish this month if I want to get my review in on time. And then one of them I think I can put off until the beginning of next month if I am not feeling it. But this is sort of like a weird thing about being in a reading slump, is that I have sort of made, it's like a very gentle commitment. If I miss any of these, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But the way that NetGalley works is you sign up to receive an ARC, and then if you receive it, you have a certain amount of time to submit your review. And there's like a number attached to your name, which is like what percentage of books that you've gotten have you reviewed. And you want that number to be higher so that you can keep getting books, because if you get a bunch of free books and then don't review any of them, maybe you're not the best person for NetGalley to be giving free books to. So there's a little bit of pressure on me to read these so that I can get my NetGalley reviews in, but I don't want to, like, so far I have not missed a single NetGalley book that I've gotten. So if I miss any of these, it's not the end of the world. I want to like alleviate that pressure from myself a little bit, but it would be nice if I could sort of get these in on time. So my ARCs. First, I have For Never and Always by Helena Greer. This is the sequel to the book that I just read last month that I talked about. So I talked about reading Seasons of Love. That was the first book. The second book is For Never and Always. So this one was just published already, actually, on November 28th. I hope I talked about my ARCs from last month properly. Whatever. It's fine. It's fine. So this one was just published on November 28th. So it's already out. If you would like to read it. Like I said, I liked the first one, so I'm excited about the second one. And the first one was had a holiday setting, so I'm thinking this one might as well. I'm not really sure. I haven't started it. But hopefully now is a nice time of year to read it. So we'll see how that one goes. The next one I have is Yours for the Taking by Gabrielle Korn. And this one will be out. Oh, this one was also just published on December 5th. So I have a couple of days left to get a review in. But I kind of have to read this quite quickly, and I haven't even started it yet. So I am worried that if I miss any, it'll probably be this one. So cross your fingers, and maybe I'll just somehow get super interested in this, but it's hard to say. This is categorized as dystopian, I think, and I do really love a dystopian story. So I feel like what I might do is download this to my Kindle and try to see if I can just read the first chapter this weekend, and maybe because sometimes truly I have had reading slumps before where all it takes is one random book and I don't know what book it's gonna be. Could be anything. So it could be this. So I think I might just force myself to read one chapter, see how I feel about it, and see if I can sort of stick with it. But we'll see. If not, that's okay. And then my last one on my to read is called Cupid's Revenge, which look at that cover. Look at the cover. By, I think, Vibka Brueggemann. I hope that I'm pronouncing that close to correct. It's romance. It's queer. It's an ARC. It'll be published on January 2nd. A big part of what drew this, it's queer, so I was excited about it for queer, but also the cover is so beautiful. Anyways, published January 2nd, so maybe towards the end of the month I'll be able to read this, but we'll see. So as of now, after having talked through things and moving Siren Queen back a month, I have 5 books on my to read list for December, 2 of which I've already started. So we'll see how that goes. I might switch things up and just put some switch to some rereads or add some rereads in to see if that can help with my reading slump. I definitely want to talk reading slump strategies with y'all for the rest of stream. But yeah, those are my December reads, hopeful reads. We'll see. I think also a thing to think about in December. So I will be traveling. Kitty? Hi. I will be traveling towards the last 2 weeks of December. I will be gone. So hopefully this isn't a surprise to y'all, but I'm traveling the end of December. The last 2 weeks of December, I am traveling with my partner to visit his family. So the thing with that is that I will have 2 weeks away from my computer, away from my normal home distractions, which might mean that I do more reading. We're also having to fly, so I often read on the plane. And I will a lot of the things that I do in my free time are play video games and play video games, and lately play video games. So since I'm traveling, I won't have my computer with me. I'm bringing my Nintendo Switch, so there are some games that I'll be able to play, but most of the games that I play on my PC. So which is fine. Obviously it'll be fine, but I'm thinking I will have more free time that I cannot spend on playing video games, which might make me more having that time with fewer distractions might make me just naturally excited to read more. So I feel like there's totally a chance that the end of the month really turns things around for me and I just start reading more. But there's also a chance that I don't want to do that and I spend my free time while we're traveling doing other stuff, or that we're super busy because we want to fit in a bunch of fun stuff to do. So we'll see. So I'm glad that we have sort of a smaller, hi Kitty. I think a smaller TBR for December is really helpful for me. So it gives me it gives me more opportunity to just see how things go and do whatever I'm feeling, and we'll figure it out. But yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Anyways, those are my November books that I read, December books that are on my TBR. We did it. We got through all the stuff that I definitely wanted to talk about. Now let's talk more about reading slumps. So I know we've been talking about reading slumps kind of since the beginning of stream, because that's really how I introed this discussion. But like I said earlier, I am officially in a reading slump. There's no avoiding it at this point. It's reading slump. And like I've said, the way that has been sort of showing up for me is that I'm really struggling to focus on books. So even books that I have started and really enjoy, I'm just struggling to continue reading. I'm really struggling with talking about books. As you've sort of seen today, I feel like I'm struggling to kind of explain my thoughts on books. And as a person who does a lot of writing book reviews, that's sort of difficult, because it's really hard to write a book review if I can't say more than I like this one, I just can't explain why. So I want to sort of think about, I would love to hear from y'all, and I know we've already had some suggestions as we've been talking, but I would love to hear from y'all some thoughts on reading slumps, what y'all do instead of reading when you're in a reading slump, what you do to sort of get out of a reading slump, all that kind of stuff. And then I want to sort of keep all of this in mind as I move forward through my reading slump. So I think a big thing that we've heard is sort of allowing ourselves to do other things instead of reading. So I know, so who said this earlier? Someone said that their reading has been sort of replaced with crafting right now. I feel like I've been spending a lot of my reading time doing other stuff as well. Largely it's been video games for me, which I love video games. I will always spend a lot of time on video games, but I find that it's less ideal to play video games before bed, and reading is something that I used to really, really enjoy doing to help me wind down for bed. And now that I'm not doing that, my sleep routine is a little bit sillier. So I feel like if I'm going to continue in this reading slump, I need to find a better activity to do before bed instead of video games. But I think in general, this idea of allowing yourself to be interested in something else while you're not super interested in reading is a really, really good idea. So crafting is a great idea. Video games are great, again, except right before bed. I don't know what other interests y'all have, but that's that's something that I want to think on more. Also, rereading. What's interesting is that I have used rereading to get me out of a reading slump before, and I have a couple of like favorite books that I always go back to. Like, this is silly to say as someone who also claims to like not super love romance, but I reread Pride and Prejudice like all the time. Like, I reread it every couple of years. So maybe that's a good one for me to reread to help me get out of my reading slump. On a Sunbeam is one that I might reread. I know another, like, general tactics that I sometimes hear about getting out of reading slumps: rereads, audiobooks, and graphic novels. So like finding ways to interact with books that are not like the sort of typical way. So I might try to do some of those and just see if anything helps. Because I think when I read On a Sunbeam, I remember reading it after like getting out of a pretty long reading slump, and it really reinvigorated my love of reading. So maybe a graphic novel, but like I'm struggling with Clementine. But maybe if I combine those things and I do a reread of On a Sunbeam, maybe that would help. I second rereading something you love. Also, watching BookTube usually gets me excited about reading. This stream has too. See, I think also encouraging, a little bit forcing, but also encouraging myself to talk about books with friends is helpful as well, because it was really interesting. When I went to start stream, I was sort of like, I'm going to talk about my November books in all of 5 minutes. I'm going to be like, here's a book I read. It was good. Here's another book I read. It was good. And it was interesting because just sort of making myself talk about it made me realize that I did have more thoughts about these books. So I think like participating in discussions or even just observing discussions is helpful as well, because once you get those ideas going, like they keep going. So maybe that's a good idea, is just like sort of finding more people talking about books to get me excited about books. If I'm not reading before bed to wind down, I'll listen to music or podcasts. I used to really enjoy podcasts, and I haven't been listening to podcasts a lot lately. I think because, not to be a big, huge complainer, but I really don't like the way that podcasts are lately. Like, I find that podcasts, when I remember listening to podcasts like, you know, like almost 10 years ago, or like 8 years ago-ish. And at that time, it was like, you'd go to wherever you're, like, I think it was mostly just Apple Podcasts then. You'd like go to Apple Podcasts, you'd click on a podcast and you'd listen to the podcast. And that was it. You'd hear the hosts, and they would talk about the podcast. And now I find that podcasts there's so many ads, and there's so many podcasts that are like hidden behind paywalls, and like you can listen to the first episode, and then when you go to listen to the second episode, it's like, okay, you have to subscribe. And it really frustrates me. It's made it harder for me to like get interested in podcasts, if that makes sense. So I feel like I haven't been listening to podcasts, but that's something that I used to really enjoy. Also music. I have been listening to a lot of music, but I don't have good wind down music. I need good wind down music. I've been listening to like K-pop lately, which does not wind down for me. That's wind up. Even being present for this stream is making me want to pick up a book today, so I really appreciate this. I'm glad. This is also making me want to pick up a book today, so I'm glad it's helping all of us. I'm having a hard time finding book creators I connect with lately. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that I recently started posting more about books on Instagram, which I have really enjoyed, but I found I like hit a wall where at first I was connecting with a lot of creators, and then I felt like I found a side of like Bookstagram that was a lot of people. It felt like very like paid or like ad content, and it felt a lot harder to connect with that, and I just don't know where to go from there, which is sort of tough. I also haven't been talking to our book club in Discord because I've been nervous about having to ask to push back, which has made me feel a little bit of a disconnect too, that's on me. Reading fan fiction helps me break reading slumps. Okay, familiar characters and lore, but new content. Also, no pressure of I paid for it, so I have to finish it, or someone else is waiting to borrow this from the library after me. That's smart. I have literally never gotten into fan fiction. So I am curious about this. Part of me wants to like encourage myself out of my reading slump because I love reading. It's really helpful before bed to wind down. I also really want to be able to continue leaving book reviews like I've said I would. I want to get back to book club because these are things that I enjoy. So like on the one hand, I really like strategies for ending my reading slump. But on the other hand, I think that it's like we've talked about a bit today, a reading slump can be a way of your brain being like, hey, let's take a little break. Let's hang tight on the reading for a bit, okay? Part of me, I want to like, encourage myself out of my reading slump, get back to reading. But part of me wants to recognize that I'm in a reading slump because I want to take a break from reading or stop reading as much as or the way that I have been reading. And so it's interesting. I want to find that balance of like, okay, let's cut back. Let's listen to my brain and body and do other things that interest me. But also I love reading. So anyways, I don't know what your plans are for your reading slumps, but I'm hoping that all of us find a good balance of getting back into reading when we want and how we want and in a way that doesn't hurt our brains, but also taking the break that our brain might be telling us we need. I think I want to add in trying out when I'm ready. I'll wait until I feel ready, but I want to see if I can try to start a reread of Pride and Prejudice because, like I said, one of my favorite books. So like a reread of a really, really familiar book might help. And then I also might try a reread of On a Sunbeam because it is one of my favorites. It's a graphic novel, so maybe that'll help too. Look at him. He's sort of in his carrier on his own, sort of, kind of. I think he's just still looking for treats though. Another thing that I sometimes like to do is like find new activities to do while I'm listening to audiobooks. So I mentioned earlier that I love audiobooks as something to listen to while I'm doing something else, like house chores, going for walks, things like that. And sometimes I can use an audiobook when I'm playing certain like really, really gentle video games. Like sometimes Garden Galaxy, I would like play Garden Galaxy and listen to an audiobook. So I might try to see if I can like find a very gentle video game that also allows me to like play video game, listen to audiobook at the same time. So I feel like I have several strategies to try out.